Venice did not fall in a single night. There was no dramatic invasion, no burning fleet in the lagoon, no foreign army marching across the Piazza San Marco. Instead, Venice died quietly while its palaces still glittered, while its merchants still wore silk, while the bells still rang over the water. By the early 1500s, Venice appeared invincible. A city without land, without fields, without armies, yet richer than most kingdoms. From the Black Sea to the Atlantic, Venetian ships stitched the world together with trade. Spices, silk, grain, silver, everything passed through Venetian hands. The sea obeyed Venice, or so it seemed. But somewhere far beyond the horizon, the sea had begun to change. New routes were opening, new powers were rising, and Venice, the greatest maritime empire in history, did not notice because it did not want to. This is the story of how an empire that ruled by commerce failed to understand economics, how a city that mastered trade refused to adapt, how wealth became complacency, and how the world moved on without asking Venice for permission. Venice did not lose because it was weak, it lost because it was successful for too long. For centuries, the Venetian Republic had engineered one of the most sophisticated economic systems the world had ever seen. It controlled choke points, it monopolized routes, it priced risk, insured cargo, and financed kings. Venice did not conquer territory, it conquered flow. But flow is fragile. When trade routes shift, when technology changes, when competitors rewrite the rules, empires built on movement collapse faster than those built on land. By the time Venice realized the sea no longer needed it, the damage was already irreversible. This is not just the fall of a city. It is a warning written in water. For centuries, Venice was not a city. It was a machine. Every canal, every dockyard, every law existed for one purpose: to move goods faster, safer, and cheaper than anyone else. Venice did not merely participate in trade, engineered it. At the heart of this system stood the arsenal, the most advanced industrial complex in the pre-modern world. Here, thousands of workers operated on principles that would not be seen again until the Industrial Revolution. Ships were built in stages, components standardized, labor specialized. A fully equipped warship could be assembled in days, not months. This was mass production centuries before the term existed. But ships alone did not make Venice powerful. Information did. Venetian merchants gathered intelligence obsessively. They tracked harvests in Egypt, wars in Anatolia, silver flows from Central Europe. Prices in Venice reflected events hundreds of miles away before other cities even heard the news. The Republic maintained diplomatic networks, not for glory, but for data. Then there was finance. Venice pioneered marine insurance, public debt, and state-backed bonds. The Venetian government borrowed directly from its citizens, turning patriotism into capital. Investors funded wars and fleets in exchange for guaranteed returns. The state became a corporation. Citizenship became a shareholding. And most importantly, Venice controlled choke points: the Eastern Mediterranean, the Adriatic Sea. Access to Constantinople Venetian forts and fleets turned geography into leverage. Asian spices could reach Europe only by passing through Venetian hands. This monopoly generated enormous profits and funded further expansion, reinforcing the cycle. For generations, this machine worked flawlessly. But machines are dangerous when they are optimized for a world that no longer exists. Venice had built an economic system designed for a Mediterranean-centered global order. Its laws, fleets, investments, and political culture all assumed one unchanging truth: that Europe's wealth would always flow east to west across familiar waters. When that assumption broke, Venice did not adapt. It doubled down, because the more perfect the machine, the harder it is to stop it even when it is driving toward collapse. Venice did not fall because it was defeated. It fell because it was bypassed. In the late 15th century, something happened that Venetian intelligence networks failed to stop, not because they were blind, but because the threat lay beyond their mental map of the world. Portugal found a way around Africa. When Vasco da Gama reached India by sea in 1498, he did more than complete a voyage. He shattered Venice's core assumption that global trade must pass through the Mediterranean. Spices no longer needed caravans, sultans, or Venetian middlemen. They could sail directly from Asia to Atlantic ports. At first, Venice dismissed this route as impractical. The journey was long. The risks were enormous. The ships were crude compared to Venetian galleys, And for decades, Mediterranean trade still seemed profitable. Venetian elites reassured themselves that this was a sideshow and experiment that could never rival centuries of established networks. This was Venice's first fatal error, measuring a new system by old metrics. Atlantic trade did not need to be efficient at first. It only needed to exist. Each voyage improved maps, ship design, and logistics. Each failure taught lessons. Meanwhile, Venice had no incentive to innovate. Its profits were still flowing, just a little more slowly each year. Then came the second shock: silver. Spanish and Portuguese empires flooded Europe with silver from the Americas. This transformed global finance. Prices rose, capital shifted west. Cities like Lisbon, Antwerp, and later Amsterdam became financial hubs not because they were smarter, but because they were positioned at the new crossroads of wealth. Venice remained rich, but it was no longer essential. Its fleets still ruled the Adriatic, its merchants still knew the Levant, but relevance had moved oceans away. Trade volumes that once passed through Venetian warehouses now unloaded in Atlantic harbors beyond Venetian reach. And Venice did not pivot outward, it fortified inward. Instead of building ocean-going fleets, Venice protected its old roots more aggressively. Instead of embracing risk, it preserved tradition. The Republic chose stability over reinvention. In a changing world, that choice was catastrophic. Venice understood that the world was changing. What it failed to understand was how dangerous caution had become. By the early 16th century, Venetian leaders were no longer blind. They saw Atlantic ports growing richer. They saw spices arriving in Europe without touching the Mediterranean. They saw their margins shrinking. But instead of responding with transformation, they responded with preservation. Venice's ruling elite was obsessed with balance. The Republic had survived for centuries precisely because it avoided radical change. Its constitution was engineered to prevent rash decisions. Power was fragmented. Innovation moved slowly by design. Stability was treated as the highest virtue. In a static world, this system was genius. In a dynamic one, it was fatal. To compete in Atlantic trade, Venice would have needed to do something unthinkable: abandon its Mediterranean-centric identity. It would have needed to invest in oceanic ship design, tolerate higher risks, accept volatile returns, and empower a new merchant class willing to gamble everything. But Venice's aristocracy feared this more than decline. Atlantic trade rewarded boldness, not refinement. It required aggressive expansion, colonial violence, and speculative finance. Venice preferred controlled profits to unpredictable fortune. Its elites had too much to lose and too little imagination. So instead of transforming, Venice optimized. It tightened regulations. It protected guilds. It doubled down on traditional industries like glassmaking and luxury goods. These brought prestige, but not scale. They kept Venice elegant, not dominant. Even its military strategy reflected this mindset. Venice continued to invest heavily in Gallus Perfect for enclosed seas, but nearly useless for global empires. While Atlantic powers built ships for oceans and cannons, Venice refined vessels for waters that no longer mattered. This was not incompetence, it was institutional inertia. Venice had become a masterpiece of governance designed for yesterday's world. And masterpieces are fragile when the environment changes. The Republic did not collapse overnight, it aged, slowly, gracefully, irreversibly. Venice did not decline because it became poor. It declined because it remained rich in the wrong way. By the 17th century, Venice still dazzled visitors. Its palaces shimmered, its art flourished. Its merchants lived comfortably. On the surface, the Republic looked prosperous, especially compared to war-torn kingdoms across Europe. But beneath the marble and gold, something had frozen. Venetian wealth had become static. Unlike the Atlantic powers, Venice no longer reinvested aggressively. Its capital flowed into land, titles, and preservation, not expansion. The aristocracy preferred guaranteed rents over risky ventures. Money that once built fleets now bought estates on the mainland. Wealth stopped moving. It began to settle. This created a dangerous illusion. Because Venice still looked rich, its leaders mistook comfort for strength. They believed decline meant bankruptcy, invasion, or chaos. As long as those disasters hadn't arrived, they assumed the system was working. But economic power is not measured by elegance. It is measured by momentum. Meanwhile, the new powers were learning brutal lessons Venice refused to relearn. The Dutch accepted cycles of boom and crash. The English tolerated financial panics. The Spanish burned through silver recklessly. They made mistakes, terrible ones, but they stayed in motion. Venice did not. Its laws discouraged failure. Its culture punished risk. Innovation required permission from institutions designed to say no. Over time, the most ambitious Venetians stopped trying to change the system. They left or adapted to stagnation. Even corruption played a role. Offices became hereditary in practice, if not in law. Influence mattered more than talent. The republic that once promoted efficiency now protected incumbents. Merit gave way to lineage. Venice had turned its greatest achievement, stability, into a cage. The city was no longer collapsing forward like an empire. It was eroding inward like a museum, and history is unforgiving to systems that confuse preservation with survival. Venice did not fall in flames, it faded in silence. By the 18th century, the Republic of Venice was no longer shaping the world, it was reacting to it. Trade routes had moved permanently west. Financial power had settled in London and Amsterdam. Empires now spanned oceans, not seas. Venice still governed its lagoons with precision, but beyond them, its influence barely registered. The city had become locally perfect and globally irrelevant. There was no single catastrophe, no decisive war, no dramatic bankruptcy. That, perhaps, was the cruelest part. Venice survived long enough to believe it had survived successfully. Its fleet still sailed, its diplomats still negotiated, its institutions still functioned. But none of these things mattered anymore. When Napoleon marched into northern Italy in 1797, Venice offered almost no resistance, not because it lacked walls or soldiers, but because it lacked purpose. The republic that had once mobilized fleets to defend trade routes now hesitated to defend itself. After more than 1,000 years, the Venetian state dissolved without a battle, and almost no one was surprised. The true collapse had happened centuries earlier, not in politics, but in economics. Venice had lost the ability to adapt to a changing system. It had mistaken order for strength, tradition for strategy, and prestige for power. In the end, Venice became a warning that dominance is temporary, that institutions designed to prevent failure can also prevent renewal, that wealth, if protected too carefully, turns into inertia. The canals remain, the palaces still stand, the beauty endures. But the empire that once controlled the flow of global trade vanished not because it was conquered, but because the world moved on without it. Venice did not lose the world in a single moment. The world simply stopped needing Venice.